Personnel, anything's brought up as far as going to executive session? No. So you're thinking we can bypass it? Should we go in? Your recommendation is no need for executive session?
From the subcommittee, there's no need.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and scratch that from the agenda. We'll go straight into old business correspondence and announcements. Okay, motion to accept the consent agenda. All right, the motion was made by Mrs. Saviano and seconded by Ms. McBride. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Okay, let's go in. Yep, I'll turn it over to Dr. Andrew.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. It is my pleasure. So what just happened in the last couple of seconds was that we just appointed 2 new hires in the district that are in the audience. So it's sometimes, as I say, anticlimactic. But it is my honor and privilege to introduce Barbara Keller, who's our new data manager. Barbara's coming to us from Dartmouth Public Schools. She has a background with Aspen, ASOP, Pearson, Teach Point, Star, School Dude, as well as Microsoft and all the other bells and whistles. So she's coming in ready to run. We're really happy to have Bob on board. So welcome to the district, Bob.
Your principals are going to get your principals hold those claws back. No fair. We provide chocolate. Great.
Why don't we let him speak and then afterwards, before we move on. Thank you, Dr. Andrew.
I also like to introduce Renee Reese. Renee, who's the new assistant principal at Hugh Cole. Renee is coming to us from the charitable school system where she was an assistant principal for the last 4 years. She was a part-time assistant principal there. She was also a literacy specialist, a reading coach, a grade 5 teacher, a grade 2 teacher. I think I've got all of them, but a great background, and it's going to be a wonderful addition to the Hugh Cole community. So welcome, Renee. And I also like to introduce Katrina Traficante. Traficante? Okay, pretty good, thanks. Katrina is actually, this is going to be her first foray into public schools. She was in Coventry for a little bit last year, but she has an undergrad from Quinnipiac and a master's from URI. Just, I think the interview team had wonderful things to say about her and her enthusiasm and the nature that her vision on engaging students in math classrooms. So I think Katrina is going to be a wonderful addition too. So we're looking forward to many, many, many years of your service at so welcome all 3. Question?
Yes, thank you. Could you just go up there for a second, please?
Me?
No.
Barb?
No, I just wanted to ask her a question.
So she could answer it.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, okay, all right, fine. I was just wondering, the superintendent said that you work for Pearson?
No, I didn't work for Pearson. I worked with their products.
With their product, not for Pearson.
Okay, all right, thank you, thank you.
well, ladies, congratulations. Thank you so much for applying to our school district, and it's wonderful that you've been accepted. And we all look forward to seeing you out there in the schools. So thank you. Okay. All right. Moving forward, let's go to superintendent's recommendations.
Recommendation 2016-52, that the school committee, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, supported by the Budget Facility Subcommittee, approve the athletic training services bid.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Ms. McBride, seconded by Ms. Saviano. Discussion.
Can I ask which one we chose?
you can. It's a Olympic physical therapy, and that was the only bid. And if you notice in your packet, they gave us a 3-year bid with a 2-year extension.
Yeah, I think
2 one-year extensions,
I'm sorry.
and Olympic is our current physical trainer as well.
the way I read that, I thought OPT was another company. That's why I was confused.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Recommendation S 2016-53 that the school committee, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, supported by the policy and curriculum subcommittee, approve the first reading of the programs for students with disabilities policy.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Mrs. Saviano,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Silva. Discussion. Go ahead, Mrs. Kimball.
I read through this, with all the things, and it seemed like it was just typos that were being tweaked. And I'm not understanding why we had to bring it to a first and second reading unless I missed something, or maybe some of the edits didn't show up when I read through them, or, the markings. I read both documents, and it seemed like we dropped a had and added an only, and we fixed a couple of verbs. Go ahead, sorry.
The reason that the policy was brought to the committee was to just update some of the language. It hadn't been touched, I think it was from 1980 something. So it really was just to update some of the language.
But, pardon me, but it seemed like the language wasn't really all that. It didn't have any impact on the content or the focus or the purpose of the policy, or even how the policy is implemented. So I understand that the policy committee would want to review old policies to make sure they're up to date and so on, but it seemed like these languages didn't qualify for coming all the way to the school committee. It just seemed like a language tweak, but I'll defer to other people's discussion on that.
I think you retitled it, and when you retitle it, it automatically has to change.
Correct, from my standpoint. As far as how that works with your policy, it is what it is. But yeah, it was just, it was really a matter of just updating language.
Okay. Any other comments?
Question.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Carter.
There's also a change in legal references, when that happens, did our attorney look this over?
I did look it over, and it's fine as it's currently drafted. And again, like Ms. Anderson said, it's mostly updates, change some of the terminology, reference to free and appropriate public education, some things like that. But it's in compliance with all the relevant statutes and regulations.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Recommendation S 2016-54 that the school committee, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, supported by the policy and curriculum subcommittee, approve the first reading of the agenda meeting format policy BDDB.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Saviano, seconded by Mrs. Silva. Discussion. This is correct.
I spoke to Erin the other day, so I'm not speaking out of turn here. I let her know what my concerns were, and then I spoke to Andrew about them. Andrew, could you explain the difference between public comment and public forum? Because I thought the law had changed so that when somebody made a public comment, we could respond.
Essentially, public forum, if advertised that way, it does allow for an interaction between the committee and members of the public on different issues. I think historically, this group has done that on your workshops as opposed to the business meeting. But yes, public comment, some comments by the public and the board is typically not encouraged to respond, not encouraged to participate, because you could be discussing something off the agenda. If it's listed as a forum, there can be some discussion, there can't be any action, but it's more dialogue back and forth.
Is it dialogue back and forth with the person who's making the comment, or is it dialogue back and forth between the school committee members?
I prefer that it's dialogue back and forth between a committee member and the individual, but I think, as you all know, I tend to be rather conservative on that. And it's just my experience that what ends up happening is it ends up being more of a group discussion on an issue that wasn't on the agenda through no one's fault and through no ill intent. I sort of completely, but it just opens up potential issues.
Good. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Mrs. Campbell.
I'm with Mrs. McBride, and you said encourage, so that doesn't mean that if someone makes a comment or asks a question during the public comment area, that someone on the school committee can respond to them. I mean, right? I do remember that law was sort of softened a little bit, where at one point you couldn't talk to them at all, but now you say encourage, but that doesn't mean that it's illegal to talk or anything like that to people.
No, the change was the public forum exception, which allowed for a dialogue. Again, you have to remember with the Open Meetings Act, it's just that the body, the government doesn't want the body discussing anything that the public wasn't noticed of. And what would happen is you could have this agenda, someone should come up in public comment, talk about something completely off the agenda, which is their right, but then the body engages in that discussion, and now you have a potential issue.
Just for clarity, Andrew, in public comment, we're not supposed to reply or respond, is that correct?
That's correct.
If we're going to respond or reply at all, we need public forum put on the agenda.
That's, with public forum listed, you can have a dialogue, yes.
I just remember when I first came on the school committee, I mean, that was one of the things I was upset about before I ran, is that you weren't allowed to do that, and I would stand there and make a comment, and it would be like deaf mutes here, waved, not able to answer or even hear me. I thought the law softened up about that, and I don't remember them requiring that it be called a forum. I do remember that if there was a specific question, are you going to paint the roof next year? Someone could say, yes, that's in the plans, or something, without defying, or I can understand about discussion if we start talking about the different kinds of shingles and we go around, I'm sorry, I'm into roofing, we go around back and forth around the kinds of shingles and formats and contractors, if that would move that obviously beyond the answering a simple question.
I'm pulling up the statute, I'm not, but my recollection is what happened is that was the intent of the change. When the change was made, they specifically used the term forum, a public forum. And so what that did is sort of form an opinion that you have two distinct issues. You have public comment, and then if you advertise it as a public forum, that's where the discussion can take place. If it's a public comment.
Answering a question.
I don't draw much of a distinction, unfortunately. I think you probably could if it was that clean. What kind of shingles, brown? I don't think you'd have a problem, but my experience leads me to believe it very rarely ends with that discussion.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah,
No action.
Right, please.
Then I went down to the committee, the subcommittee, committee reports, initiatives, superintendent's issues, all of that. Well, it's true on the general face of it. You can't just have it say issues. You have to have 1, 2, 3, and they have to be lined up. And so I know, for example, that Mrs. Campbell wanted to ask a question on administrative reports, and we're not allowed to do that anymore. We have to wait until the next agenda to put it on. So I thought this got very convoluted, because then when you got to future agenda items, it said no discussion, reminding everybody that there was no discussion. And so then I had a small conversation with Mr. Silva here, and I kind of don't disagree with him that it should just say that the agenda will be set by the chair and the superintendent, and no more, because everything has to have a caveat in it, and I worry that it gets that complicated. And so I'm suggesting that it's Mr. Silva's idea, but I'm putting it forward as something that we might want to consider instead of parsing words on an agenda format.
Can we move this to the personnel and back to the policy committee?
Or can she just make a motion?
Yeah, do you want to amend the motion?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make a motion that that we amend the policy to read that the agenda will be set. That I like the wording about all agenda items must be to the level of specificity so the public can identify the issues. And that the agenda will be set by the chair in conjunction with the superintendent.
Second.
Okay, discussion on this amendment to the motion. Go ahead, Ms. Lynch.
I agree with Marge. Sometimes I think when you make things too complicated and all it does is just muddy the waters. I think at some point we have to trust the people that we put, our superintendent, our chair of the school committee, that they're gonna, put the right agendas together. I agree with Marge.
Any other comments?
And Paul, could I add to that motion, please, before we vote, that we include the description of the consent agenda?
Well, yeah, I mean, that has to, it doesn't have to be there by law, it's at the top.
Yeah, but we struck it out because we put it down under the agenda, so I think it should go back at the top.
Set by.
Okay.
Okay, no,
Just one comment, because I'm a believer, and Andrew said it a number of times, and Andrew, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth after she put it in mine. But sometimes less is actually more, because when you put the specifics that we hear, if you go back and look at some of our old agendas, you may find they didn't comply with the policy that we had that outlined an agenda. But if you do, this is why I had the discussion with Marge. My comment was, if you make it a broad statement that the agenda will be created by the chair in conjunction with the superintendent, and it's going to comply with the law, because it has to, then everything will get put in that's supposed to get put in. You don't have to actually dictate all the things along the way. So I support the amendment to change it to that.
thank you. Any other comments?
Can I just clarify the consent agenda comment that's struck?
Yeah, well, the consent thing, she said, never mind.
Did you have any other questions on the amendment? Okay. All right, all in favor of the amendment?
Yeah, no, wait,
Sorry, Mr.
I just
Carroll.
need the amendment repeated, please.
Do you have the amendment, or do you want Marge to
I know
try to
I've heard
answer
that
that
too.
again?
Marge made a motion to amend the policy to read that the agenda will be set by the chair in conjunction with the superintendent.
Chair and superintendent, yes, I was going to say.
Mr. Saviano, the discussion in the subcommittee, there was a lot of talk on that piece as far as, not that you were. Okay, good. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, let's go ahead and vote on the motion.
Go to the policy now.
Or any further discussion on the original motion?
The amended,
Well, now the amended motion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, ayes have it. All right, going into subcommittees, we'll start with Budget Facility Subcommittee. Step right.
Our next meeting is the second Monday in September at 6 p.m. at Oliver School. We're all set for school. We're moving along, we're in good shape, and I encourage all of you, please, to take a look, if you haven't already, at Katerra School at the baseball field. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
The last meeting I was in, which was not the last meeting that you had, we talked about the Colts Fund and how the town council was expecting a policy. Who writes that policy on how to act money? Is that from the budget subcommittee, or is that from the policy committee?
No, that's from Mario and Dr. Andre and Nathan Cloro have not met yet. That was on our agenda, that stays on our agenda. I believe that the two of them will work out where it should go, and so I will be quiet and let Mario address that answer, but that stays on our agenda. It's all yours.
Yeah, so we're scheduled to meet next week, and then, but essentially, as far as policy, I think it's more guidance for the Bristol Town Council of how it's the access, so that they're looking for our recommendation on notification, whether it goes from the school committee first, but it's really the town council's looking for guidance as opposed to a policy and procedure as opposed to a policy.
And so who, I would think that the school committee would have input into that procedure and policy, and so are you working with anyone on the committee, in the buildings committee, or the finance committee, or the budget committee?
No, in the past I've been working with the vice chair on this. So, but I'll bring it to the full school committee for your approval.
I just want to keep it moving, because I know sometimes with this town council meeting every 3 weeks and us meeting every other week, that, you know, time runs away with and waiting for groups to meet. And if we're going to have to do something, obviously we'll need some kind of a structural engineer, and we'll need some kind of a, so I think that there's a lot of time, and I don't want to, the winter is the best time to be doing all that paper pushing, so I want to sort of get a policy or a procedure or whatever in place so that we can start that paperwork, so that we can do it in the fall, or I mean in the summer.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Mr. Goodman?
We are already doing some of that and then having our architects investigate it, so we discussed all of that about this subcommittee meeting, so we're on the forward, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Okay, as far as policy, Mrs. Schofield is not here. On Tuesday, September 6th, there will be a policy and curriculum subcommittee meeting at 6 o'clock at all. On to personnel contract.
There's nothing to report at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. As far as wellness committee, Mrs. Wainwright is not in tonight, but she did let me know that she had nothing further to discuss and go on to the full committee. And as far as chairperson's initiatives, I have nothing to bring up at this point. Can I have a
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion made by Ms. Blake, seconded by Ms. Campbell, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I think that's a half hour.
Aye, Captain.
Right.